Hi baby cakes. I thought today I would address a question that I have received a few times in the comments underneath my videos, and I've received quite a few times in emails as well. And it's the question regarding the big kind of ideological turnaround from Doreen Virtue, and basically what my thoughts are on that. And I know that some of the emails that I've received have been they've been kind of anxiety laden, I would say, or markedly upset about Doreen's recent change of heart and some of the things that she has said or alluded to, and just the idea that she's going to be distancing herself from her products which allude to the new age or celebrate neo-pagan ideas or promote goddess worship, and that she is going to be also distancing herself from any kind of divination, fortune telling or anything like that. Essentially that she has kind of declared herself as being kind of like claimed by Christ, if you will, my words not hers, and that she's eventually going to have her name taken off of these products, etc., and you know, all that kind of thing. And I understand that a lot of people are feeling really difficult, conflicted things about it, particularly those who have invested a lot in the products and the certifications maybe as well. So obviously I can understand why there are these issues arising. I've watched quite a lot of the videos from people about the Doreen Virtue thing, and one of the comments that I've noticed that comes up quite a lot is, you know, we shouldn't idolise others, and we shouldn't expect pillars in the community to hold fast to their beliefs and not evolve in their personal practice and not change their mind about their theological framework. We shouldn't need pillars in the community to remain ensconced in the same framework that they always have been. We shouldn't feel somehow diminished or demeaned because somebody else who was a pillar of the community, or somebody well known in the community, or somebody who influenced us positively in the community has moved on. But I don't think that's necessarily why people are upset about this. I don't really get the sense that those who are feeling upset about it are upset because she's found Christ in a more personal way, or that she's personally chosen to move away from new age ideas or pagan ideas. I don't really get the sense that that's why people are feeling upset or confused or resentful. I think that most people in this community are completely accepting of personal spiritual evolution, right? I think most people are accepting of the fact that the framework changes over time and people bring in different beliefs and they retire old practices and they bring in new ones. I don't think anyone's personally upset about Doreen Virtue's personal take on her spiritual reality. It's obviously bigger and broader than that, okay? Number one, she has been selling certifications and courses and stuff like that. Her name is all over various different courses which are supposed to carry weight in the spiritual community, and a lot of people that have paid to go on these courses and get these certifications have done so partly to be associated with her name, which had good standing in the community. Her name represented a standard, it represented a certain standard of training, it represented a certain perspective on things, that if somebody wanted to associate their brand with that perspective and with that high level of training, they would want to save up for a Doreen Virtue certification and get one of them. And although there are a lot of people that feel as though the certifications are just as valuable and they're not upset by Doreen Virtue's change of heart and her desire to distance her name from these things, there are a lot of other people that feel as though the value of their certification has massively decreased, and I can completely understand that, and to a large extent that is how I would feel, so I definitely can relate to why some people feel that way. So that's part of it. And you know, another piece of it is something that Joey Morris mentioned in one of her videos. Now I actually wrote down the name of the video here in my notes. So it was in Joey Morris's Empower Yourself Witches video. She talked about the Doreen Virtue situation, and she said that when somebody that has been, you know, neck deep in the new age community, the pagan community, new age concepts, etc., comes out and says, you know, I've found Jesus and I want to distance myself from these things now, they're no longer a part of my spiritual reality, there is a huge worry about backlash. There is a huge worry about the way that these previously beloved practices and beliefs are going to be presented henceforth by somebody who has come to Christ, who has found Jesus. And we've seen over and over and over and over again, you only have to look at it on YouTube, these people who were previously witches or previously part of the New Age movement to one degree or another, who have then come out and given their testimony and said that they have been saved, and really spoken in hugely disparaging terms about the practices and about the beliefs that underlie those practices. Now, there could definitely be a debate about the extent to which those kinds of videos and those kinds of accounts are damaging. I think it depends largely on things like where you live and stuff like that. So for me, I don't think I personally have a right to say, oh, those kinds of videos aren't really damaging, it's not really a big deal, who cares if Doreen Virtue starts to speak disparagingly about, you know, the New Age or whatever. I don't think it would be fair for me to say that personally, because I don't live in a situation and in a location largely where I feel really discriminated against, and where I feel like what people say about their time in this movement reflects on me and affects me directly. So I really don't have a right to say that it doesn't affect people, because just because it doesn't affect me doesn't mean it doesn't affect others, if that makes sense. So that's also a part of the issue. So you've got the certification kind of area of things, not just the certification, but the decks as well, the tools as well. They cost money. I think there's different kinds of decks or products or whatever that you could collect, that you could feel an affinity with, that don't necessarily connect you to the mindset and the personality of an individual. So for example, there are certain like studios or makers who create specific kinds of tarot decks, and you might collect all of the ones that that particular studio put out. Those particular makers, you might really like the decks that they do, and you might collect those decks, but you're not necessarily paying for the name, and you're not necessarily associating the work of that brand with the work of an individual. With Doreen Virtue's work, you are very much connecting with her. You're connecting with where her path was at a particular time and what was really coming through into her consciousness. And of course, Doreen Virtue, the name Doreen Virtue is brandished all over the fronts of these decks, all over the boxes and everything. So you're very much kind of buying into her as a personal brand when you purchase her stuff. So it's not just the certifications and the fact that those could arguably have decreased in value and decreased in credibility because of you know, what's happened, but it's also the products as well. Now, that's not to say that Doreen Virtue should be personally penalised for this at all. It's just a reality. It's just a fucking fact, you know. It's not that she should be personally penalised for it. It's just really unfortunate. And I think we need to understand a little more why people would be upset about it, or why people would feel that it was an inconvenience to them, for sure. And I definitely can see why people are feeling that way. The other thing that I think has got a lot of people's backs up about this situation and upset a lot of people is something that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. It's the dog I'm looking after. I don't think a lot of people are aware of the fact that Doreen Virtue did actually put out a video quite a few months before the video that she put out more recently. Now, that video was quickly removed, and when I searched for it back in the summertime, I think it was, I couldn't find any trace of it online. All I could find were responses to the video from people, but I couldn't actually find the video that she made. Now, from the responses that I watched to this initial video, which came out several months prior to the one that everybody is now kind of talking about, the responses implied very strongly that the initial video that Doreen Virtue put out was quite derogatory towards New Age spirituality, and that she in some way or another did actively warn people against continuing to use her cards. I think a couple of the responses that I watched to the initial video alluded to the fact that Doreen Virtue requested that people throw the decks away, or you know, discontinue working with them, which in a way I can see as being kind of taken as a derogatory comment against people who practice New Age spirituality, because it's kind of like saying, these are tools of the New Age, please do not use them. You know, I don't know whether or not she explicitly said like turn to Christ, but I think from this first video that came out initially, it's clear that she came on a lot stronger, and that actually initially upset a lot of people. Now, as I said, that video went the way of the dodo very fucking quickly, and I have not been able to find a copy of it. I've not been able to find a re-upload anywhere. I have a feeling that Doreen herself either rewatched the video and thought to herself, that's a little too strong and it's unfair and I shouldn't come on strongly like that, and she deleted it herself, or somebody had a little word in her ear out of love and just said, look, that's too strong. If you want to continue to stay on with Hay House and you want to continue to be a voice in the spiritual community, then you can't really disparage other people's spiritualities, or whatever she said in the video. I can't say what she said in the video because, like I said, I couldn't find a copy of it, but I do know that there was an initial video that was put out a month or 2 or 3 months, I'm not sure, before this more official video. And that first video was not tasty from what I can see from the responses that have been made. There were a lot of people that were quite hurt and felt as though their new age spirituality or pagan spirituality was being actively demeaned by Doreen. So there is that to the equation as well. That's a reason why people are upset, that I think a lot of other people who have only watched the subsequent video, the more recent video, don't actually realise. And it sounds to me like the initial video definitely got some backs up. A lot of people have asked me, you know, what I think they should do, what I think they should do about the Doreen Virtue decks that they own, whether or not they should still work with them. Some people have said that they feel really upset about what's happened, but they feel like they don't have a right to be upset. They feel personally attacked by Doreen and by some of the things that she said, and they're just really gutted. And, you know, I would say I'm really, really happy for Doreen Virtue that she has found this much closer connection to Christ. To be honest, it doesn't surprise me whatsoever from the little that I've engaged with her work over time. It seems to me really quite obvious that she's more kind of interested in Christ consciousness and in Judeo-Christian stuff and like angels and that kind of thing. I never saw her as being New Age or neo-pagan anywhere near as much as I saw her as being kind of like... I don't know, I guess, like, how would you say, mystical Christian. That's more how I would have associated her stuff anyway, so I'm not really all that surprised, in all honesty, that it's gone this way. I'm really happy for her that she's personally had this awakening. I think it's awesome. What I would really not think was very awesome is if she was then to turn around, if she was to turn around from this point onwards and actually start to try to engage with her audience and try and get them to leave behind their beliefs or to start to question their beliefs. That would be really obviously demeaning and offensive, and it would be not cool to people who have paid her bills for a really long time. Whether or not she is going to go on to do that, I mean, I don't think she would, but who knows, and I can understand why people are worried about it, for sure. I can definitely understand why people are nervous about that. As far as using Doreen Virtue's decks, you've really got to go to a personal place and figure that out for yourself. You've got to decide if so far she has said or done anything that has really put you off the name and everything associated with the name, or at least the professional work associated with the name. I have not really messed around with Doreen's products very much at all. I have one Doreen Virtue deck, which is the Goddess Guidance Oracle deck, and despite the fact that I would say that it is somewhat culturally problematic, it's kind of a problematic fave for me, meaning that I can kind of overlook the issues that I have with it, and I can work with it anyway, and I do work with it anyway. It is the deck that I use for my Goddess Guidance readings at the moment. I have been in the market for a few more kind of different decks for my Goddess Guidance readings for a while, and I'm definitely looking into purchasing more so I can have a bit of choice. But I think even when I have those choices available, I will still have the Doreen Virtue Goddess Guidance Oracle as an option, because I just love it. I think it reads really well, it gives really good results. Guys, if you don't know what my Goddess Guidance readings are, I will leave the links down below to the full length one and the mini one, and at the moment I use the Doreen Virtue Oracle deck for both of them. So I'm going to continue to use that deck. If I had a really much closer relationship with Doreen's work and it had really influenced me and it had really, you know, been a big thing for me, then I think I would obviously be probably a lot more conflicted about using the decks that I owned of hers, or I would at least be on the fence until I'd seen more from her. I have watched the more recent video that she did where she reads from the Bible, and I've actually watched a interview that she did where she talks through her testimony with a Christian YouTuber. I'll leave below the video, 2 videos that I'm talking about that I've seen. And you know, to me, she is not necessarily saying anything that I would consider to be disparaging or demeaning to any of her former followers, to her audience, to new age people who have previously engaged with her work. I think that she could be considered to be walking that fine line, though, for sure. At one point in one of the videos that I saw, she said that she feels like the response from a lot of the New Age audience is one that comes from a place of fear. And I don't really think that's fair. I think that people have valid concerns, and I feel like diminishing or kind of like demeaning the response and saying, you know, it's just one of fear, and it's one of you know, people hearing somebody's testimony for Christ and immediately thinking the worst. I don't think that's really fair. I don't think that's what people are doing. I think they do have legitimate concerns. Like I said, they have concerns about the certification, they have concerns about the decks, they have concerns about what she's going to do from here on in, because there is a really big culture of people turning away from New Age concepts and pagan concepts and instantly then trying to win souls for Christ. And we don't want that in our midst. That is not pleasant. That is fucking irritating. That is a drain on our energy. That is a really unfortunate thing. It's fucking boring. You know, we just don't want it. We don't want any more of it. And like I said at the beginning, for some people it's also dangerous. For some people it also fuels the fire in the location where they are dealing with the stuff they're dealing with, you know. For me to look at this situation is very different, for example, than somebody who lives in a really, really hardcore fundamentalist Christian part of the Bible Belt. So they, you know, I can understand why people have these feelings of like, look, it's great that you found Christ, but can you be really, really careful what you do regarding these things that are still really important to me? Because I'm trying to win understanding from people, and your attempt to win souls for Christ through demeaning everything that you've spent so long not only believing in but making money from is really fucking with my plan to try to help people to understand that this is not bad. This is just what I believe in, and it's perfectly legitimate, you know. So it really depends where you're coming from. Definitely, I can understand people out there have a lot more issues with it than perhaps I would need to, or that it would make sense for me to have, you know. So I've done a big ramble on this. I hope it's been understandable, and I hope it's offered some help. If you no longer want to work with Doreen Virtue decks, you totally don't have to. Even if you just feel like something's just gone a little bit flat for you with regard to her stuff since this happened, that's okay. I don't think that means you've made a personal judgment of her. It's just that, you know, maybe you associate her name with stuff that wouldn't feel that positive for you to use those things to do a reading for yourself or somebody else. And you need to feel positive about the tools that you're using. So don't worry if you don't want to use her stuff. I don't think that that really reflects badly on you. I don't think it means that you're judging her really harshly for finding Christ or turning away from her former beliefs. Everybody's allowed to do that. Everybody's allowed to evolve. I think it's much more so about the way that she chooses now to engage with her prior audience, the people that have engaged with her work, the people that have purchased her stuff. And it's about being respectful. When you move on from the New Age, if you move on from pagan ideas, if you find Christ, it's really about being respectful. It's about being respectful of the time that you spent engaging in those ideas and practices which you've now left behind, recognizing how valuable they were for you at the time, even though they're not where you've ultimately ended up, and recognizing that there are still a lot of other people who are seriously engaged in those concepts and practices that you have now left behind. And it's really important that you do not step on their toes, that you do not try to convert them, that you do not try to speak to them in a demeaning or disparaging way. And the idea that people from the New Age who have been engaging with Doreen's work have been reacting to this news from a place of fear, I think actually a lot of people have been reacting to this news from a place of seeing that initial video, which was hastily deleted, where I do get the feeling that Doreen did come on a lot stronger with the kind of God squadding and Bible thumping and telling people maybe not to use the decks anymore. That's the impression that I got, but like I said, that video was deleted. It's finito. I can't find it, but it seemed to upset a lot of people. A lot of people seem to feel from seeing that first video that they were being told not to use the tools anymore. And obviously that's going to go some way to making people react badly. And even if some people are reacting from a place of fear as to what Doreen will choose to do next in her career, I think that that is fair, considering just how common it is for people to find Christ and then start to shit all over everything they once held dear before they found Christ. You know, that is a common theme. It's a common narrative. It's a normal thing for people to feel a little concerned about. So I think it's understandable that a lot of people who have been fans of Doreen's work are on the fence and are kind of tentatively waiting to see what happens before they can really come to an understanding of the extent to which they may want to work with her products anymore or anything like that. But just for the record, before I sign off on this particular issue, guys, from the stuff I've seen from Doreen Virtue since this happened, she has said that I think it's after a year or 2 years, she's going to have her name completely removed from all of the decks that she's ever created. It seems like such an extreme thing with the body of work that she's put out. It's such a big body of work that touches so many themes. Like I said, it's not really my cup of tea so much. I've only got the one deck, but it does seem extreme that this entire huge body of work is now going to be stripped of her name. But yeah, she's not going to have Doreen Virtue on those decks. Those decks will be given back to Hay House essentially, and they will take the money for them, and Doreen Virtue no longer wants to make money from those decks, so they'll continue to be available, but they won't have Doreen Virtue written on them, which might be the best thing for some people now, who do still want to play with the decks but maybe would want to kind of wait for a while and then purchase editions that don't have her name on them, depending on how you're feeling. But I suppose the main thing I want to say before I before I sign off on this topic is that your feelings are valid. I have seen some videos, like I said at the beginning, that have been really heavy on driving the point home that we should not expect our idols and pillars of the community to maintain their belief systems indefinitely, and we shouldn't place importance on what other people believe. We should just focus on what we believe, and I think that's absolutely true, and that point is fair. But at the same time, I want to definitely hold space for people who are feeling unsure or upset about this seemingly very sudden and very surprising change of heart. I can understand it, especially from the perspective of somebody who has seen a lot of resources from people who have been neck deep in the new age world and apparently really committed, and then suddenly turned around and started slagging it off to everybody and saying that it's the stuff of the devil. Like, that must get your fucking back up after a while. That must be really annoying. And for a pillar of the community to find Christ and be actively moving away from the work she's produced before, even to the extent of taking her name off of it, yeah, you know, there are going to be some reactions that are less than positive and less than glowing, and there are going to be some people that are saying that they're happy that Doreen's found what works for her spiritually, but at the same time they are very eager to be assured that she's now not going to turn around and try and, you know, convert everyone or say anything disparaging about the new age or anything like that. So these are my thoughts on the Doreen Virtue situation, and hopefully they've at least been interesting to listen to. But I felt like I should say something because so many people have asked me, and there are members of my audience that are definitely upset about it or are raising an eyebrow over it. So those are my thoughts, guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments below.